Good morning, everybody, and hope you're doing well. And I won my fantasy football last night, close game, so I'm feeling ecstatic. And we get to jump in and talk about Jesus this morning, so that's awesome. But anyways, hope you're doing well, and hope you can get something out of today. There's a little bit of a lengthy passage that we're going to go through today, so I'm going to dive right in and just dig up whatever we can find. So remember yesterday we were talking about Jesus healing the blind man. So that's what happened. Jesus heals him, and then the Pharisees question him. So we're going to jump right in. So John chapter 9, verse 13 says, "They brought to the Pharisees the man who had been blind. Now the day on which Jesus had made the mud and opened the man's eyes was the Sabbath. Therefore the Pharisees also asked him how he had received his sight. 'He put mud on my eyes,' the man replied, 'and I washed, and now I see.'" A couple interesting things there. Number one, they did not believe, they taught that you can't work on the Sabbath. So that's why that was a big deal, because Jesus performed a miracle on the Sabbath, and that to them was technically work. So he was breaking the rules. Also, I like that the man did not change his story. He said, "This is what happened." The first time they asked, the second time they asked, he told them exactly what happened. I think we change our stories a lot, but that's just me. All right, verse 16. "Some of the Pharisees said, 'This man is not from God, for he does not keep the Sabbath.' He broke the rule. But others asked, 'How can a sinner do miraculous signs such as these?' So they were divided. Even the Pharisees were divided. So not all the Pharisees were bad. Not all the Pharisees didn't believe. Nicodemus is one of those. Verse 17, "Finally they turned again to the blind man. 'What have you to say about him? It was your eyes that he opened.'" This is the third time they've asked him about this experience. The man replied, "He is a prophet." So he doesn't even really believe in Jesus' divinity, not yet. The Jews still did not believe that he had been blind and had received sight until they sent for the man's parents. "Is this your son?" they asked. "Is this the one you say was born blind? How is it that now he can see?" I think it's interesting that they involve the parents. I mean, logistically, I get it, but the parents weren't there. The parents weren't eyewitnesses to this ordeal. So anyways, here's the parents' response, verse 20. "We know he is our son." That's good. The parents answered, "And we know he was born blind. But how can he see now, or who opened his eyes? We do not know. Ask him. He is of age. He will speak for himself." His parents said this because they were afraid of the Jews. For already the Jews had decided that anyone who acknowledged that Jesus was the Christ would be put out of the synagogue. They already had the rule that if you said Jesus was God, you're out too. They already had that rule. Verse 23, "That was why his parents said, 'He is of age, ask him.'" Verse 24, "A second time they summoned the man who had been blind. 'Give glory to God,' they said. 'We know this man is a sinner.'" They know that Jesus is a sinner. Somehow they know that Jesus is a sinner, even though he's perfect and never did anything wrong. And also this is the fifth time they asked the blind man about the story. Verse 25, "He replied, 'Whether he is a sinner or not, I do not know. One thing I do know, I was blind, but now I see.' Then they asked him, 'What did he do to you? How did he open your eyes?' He answered, 'I have told you already, and you did not listen. Why do you want to hear it again? Do you want to become his disciples too?'" Basically, sarcasm right there. Verse 28, "Then they hurled insults at him and said, 'You are this fellow's disciple. We are disciples of Moses. We know that God spoke to Moses, but as for this fellow, Jesus, we don't even know where he comes from,'" which is false. They know exactly where he comes from. Because Jesus said he came from God, and because the logistics and the history and the facts say that he was born in Bethlehem and is from the line of David. So that's just completely false. Verse 30. I don't think I missed one. Yeah. Verse 30. "The man answered, 'Now that is remarkable. You don't know where he comes from, yet he opened my eyes. We know that God does not listen to sinners. He listens to the godly man who does his will. Nobody has ever heard of opening the eyes of a man born blind. If this man were not from God, he could do nothing.' To this they replied, 'You were steeped in sin at birth. How dare you lecture us?' And they threw him out." Now that last part is crazy. That's not the focus of my of today's talk, but that last part is nuts because he basically says, you're proving your point himself. You don't know where he comes from. The Pharisees said, we don't know where he comes from. And this guy says, you don't know where he comes from? Then that means he must come from God like he says he does because he performs miracles. So he throws it back in the Pharisees' face and says, you're proving your own point that he is God because you claim not to know where he comes from. I love that part. I don't know why, but I love that part. Anyways, the focus of today, though, the question is, what would it take for you to believe? What would it take for you to believe? See, this is the fifth time the Pharisees asked this man about the situation. They asked him 4 times, and they asked his parents once. But here's the interesting part. They already had their answer in their heart. They already had the answer in their heart. It says right there in the previous verse that they had already made up the rule. They had already made up the rule that if you claim that Jesus is God and follow him, you're out. You're out of the synagogue. You're out of Judaism. You're gone. They already made that rule, and they already knew, they said themselves, they already knew that Jesus was a sinner, and they already knew that he was not from God like he says he was. They had made up their minds. That's why it took so many times for them to ask this guy the question, because they weren't getting the answer that they wanted. They weren't getting the answer that they wanted, and I think that's why people don't believe in Jesus today, and I think that's why hopefully they at least test him to see what he gives them. But a lot of times Jesus doesn't give us the answer we want. A lot of times Jesus doesn't give us exactly what we want because our desires and our hearts are flawed, but his is perfect. But that's a whole different topic. I have dogs next to me, that's why my nose is all itchy, so hopefully that doesn't distract you. But anyways, for sake of time, what does it take for you to believe? What would it take for you to believe? What would Jesus have to do? What would God have to prove in your life to open your mind, to open your eyes, to open your heart to follow him? What would that take for you? See, Jesus made this man see. He was born blind. And the blind guy keeps saying over and over again, I was blind. Jesus changed my life. Look at the evidence. Look at the facts. Look at the life change. That's what it took. Jesus did a miracle. Maybe Jesus needs to do a miracle for you, and I will pray that that happens. I believe that Jesus will do what it takes for you to believe in him if you open yourself up to that. Sorry, my dog is chewing and my nose is super itchy. Anyways, I hope that doesn't distract you. I believe that Jesus knows what it'll take for you to believe and follow him. I believe the only step that's missing is for you and I to open ourselves up, to open our minds, to open our hearts, and just test him for what he shows and what he says he is. I believe that Jesus will do what it takes. But what would it take for you? What would it take for Jesus to change your life? And then here's the challenge. That's the question. Here's the challenge. What would it take for Jesus to change your life? Ask him for it. Even if you've never talked to God before in your life, even if you don't believe in God, even if you think the Bible and all this Jesus stuff is stupid, ask him. Just go out on a limb. Just challenge yourself. Just open yourself just a minuscule amount to say, this is what it would take for me to believe in God. Can you do it? This is what it would take for me to believe that Jesus is real and can change my life. Can you do it? I don't know what the answer is. He's not necessarily going to give us what we want. But see, it's a heart issue because the Pharisees already believed in their heart what they wanted to believe. And no matter the amount of information, no matter the amount of evidence, no matter the amount of people continually showing them this is real, they still did not believe, and they ended up throwing him out. I hope that's not you today. I hope that's not the situation and the case for you. What would it take for you to believe in Jesus? And ask him. Ask him. I don't have enough time, but that's my testimony, and I'll share it with you later. If you want. If you want to know my testimony and what I exactly mean, I will tell you in a message, in a comment, in a text. Just let me know. That was my situation. It took a specific thing for God to do in my life for me to believe in him, and I asked him, and he did it, and my life changed. That's it. I hope you can do that today. I hope you can sense my passion today. I want my friends to experience Jesus. I love you guys. I'm up to the 10-minute mark. I'm sorry I went long today, but God is good and He loves you. I'll talk to you guys tomorrow.